We've got Karen Bernal, former head of the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party. Here we have 4 candidates running for the California Democratic Party seats. 3 of them are running for 2 seats for vice chair, and 1 person's running for treasurer. We have an announcement to make. Then we have 3 people that are going to speak on TOPA, which empowers tenants when a place is going to be sold. It's a very interesting thing. And then we have 1 person speaking about Senate Bill 90 and AB 1416. So we really need to get started now. So our first person that speaks is going to be Karen Bernal. We're just thrilled to have you here, Karen. So go ahead and introduce yourself and go for it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name's Karen Bernal. I'm the former chair of the California Democratic Party Progressive Caucus. I served for 3 terms there. And, I was happy to turn it over to Amr Shergill, who is the current chair right now. One of the things that I have been doing, I think most people also know me for, besides, causing a lot of good trouble in the party throughout the years, a lot of good trouble actually, is also being involved over 15 years in the ADEMS process. I came in with a lot of folks back in 2005, believe it or not. And, starting about that time and rather really in about 2007, we started to organize, progressives did, statewide. And what happened is it, took on various forms. We had a website I did along with Susie Shannon. It's pretty much Susie Shannon's now, theprogressiveslates.org. And then, we started to diverge a little bit. Many will recall the hot contest that went down between Eric Bauman and Kimberly Ellis over 2 races. And at that point, we started adems.vote. After this was all over, we decided to try to change things up a bit and to really go from a slate-oriented kind of approach to things to a candidate-oriented, and Progressive Delegates Network was born. And so, as most people know, with each ADEMS that come up, it seems like the contest becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And basically, one thing has never changed, and that is with these ADEMS, which is the Assembly District Election Meetings, that's what it stands for. It determines 1/3 of our delegation pool to the overall delegation to the state party. But it's always been a contest between the power of the legislature, the legislative leadership, and the grassroots. In a nutshell, it is the place where the grassroots of the party, often people that come from movement politics, that come from a lot of left movement attempts to run, and we organize them, and almost always we are facing off well-entrenched establishment types. Now, this particular ADEMS that we just concluded, everyone knows that we've been in the time of COVID. There was not going to be in-person meetings. The registration was online. There were mail-in ballots, and there were a lot of problems. And not all of them can be chalked up to the fact that we were dealing in a time of COVID and uncharted territory in terms of how the process and should go and the kind of procedures that should accompany it. But also, we had a U.S. postal system that's been gutted by Trump. But more to the point, we also had what we feel many progressives feel that had been put into place, a really, really poorly thought out system by by the leadership of the party in terms of our process. And it really ended up so that there was a lot of disenfranchisement. There were many people who had registered for ballots that didn't receive ballots, and others who never registered for ballots receiving ballots. And then we had a situation of changing deadline dates, all to add up to a massive confusion and mistakes on the part of the party, where even people who received ballots ahead of the final deadline, arbitrarily imposed, I might add, were put through the ringer and not able to get their ballots back in time to the party to have their votes counted. There were many things that occurred. For instance, after that occurred, we had a set of results that came out, initial results, only to find out hours and days later that those results were not accurate as well. And there were many updates. And as you can imagine, if you're a candidate running in this, it was unnecessary and in a way just emotionally a wreck, because many people thought they won. Some people, winners and losers changed fortunes over the first and second initial outcome. And then what ended up happening is after that occurred, we were left with over 1,500 ballots that had still not been counted, who, through no fault of their own by the voters, many cases, like I said, received their ballots after they had registered on time, sometimes a day or two before the new arbitrarily decided upon final deadline date by the party. They weren't able to get them back in time. Now, I want to add that, in California, we have a mail-in system, and we go by postmarks. And we also allow 17 days for the ballots to get back. The party had an absolute choice it could make here, and they could have chose, like they did in the first deadline that was set, to go with a postmark date. But in the final formulation, they simply said it has to be back by March 3rd. It should have said it has to be postmarked by March 3rd, and that they would honor it for the next 17 days. Well, what occurred at that point was, since they weren't going to do that, there was a petition sent around. 62 e-board members signed it. It was supported by many, many more rank and file delegates. And it forced according to the bylaws of the party, what triggered an e-board meeting that the party had to have. Now, the chair of our party, Chair Rusty Hicks, didn't want that to happen. There were others who filed complaints with a compliance review commission, which is where a lot of disputes go to be adjudicated. And so many people who were unhappy with the outcome of the ADEMs filed complaints there as well. And what ended up happening is that the complaints that triggered the petition to have an e-board meeting, which called to count the votes, ended up at the CRC. The CRC sided unanimously with the people, with the delegates who had made the complaints initially, and all over I think it was 1,500 and I forget, 25 perhaps. I'm not really sure on the exact number, but all of those were counted. And now 5 of the ADs, from what I understand, it made a difference in those ADs. The count all over the place, it counted in all of the ADs, but in terms of the winners and losers, again, that was the 3rd time there was changing fortunes with the winners and losers. And I want to point out that that wasn't an unnecessary and absolutely unacceptable thing that was foisted upon the delegates that they should not have had to experience again. You can imagine if you're a candidate on pins and needles, and let's say that you're sitting, on a razor thin margin, now you're put through it for a third time. And so this is basically how we ended up. Still to this day, Chair Hicks has not said that he believed that he was wrong or that all the votes should be counted, even when the CRC, a committee that he appoints, decided against him. He still has not admitted anything, any wrongdoing, or apologized for this. So anyways, that's where we are. I want to stop really quick so that we can have some, if there's any questions. But before I go, I want to say, I know that you guys are going to be listening to some candidates coming up here. And with the exception of only one of them, none of them have had anything to say about what took place. And, you know, along with the other questions that we have regarding, you know, the current leadership, especially in Chair Hicks, I'd like to know what they have to say, what they would have done in that ADEMS fiasco, why only one of the officers, of the current officers, brought this to their attention to try to have something done before the ballot deadline. And also, you know, given the fact that we have no apology, and we also have a situation where we have a chair that accepted money from a fossil fuel when the delegates told him not to. Why the silence, and what do they have to say about that? Thank you. Are there any questions, or do I have time?
Carol?
I'm sure there's people with questions. Who would like to ask a question?
Yeah, if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat or raise your hand.
Okay, if someone could tell me what the question is, I'd appreciate it.
One of the questions just came in from Bernie Lenoff. What are the action steps forward for ADEMS both now and in the coming months here?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, in my view, this is the actions to date of the chair, and let's be real about this. He has an outsized influence in this matter. The dates that were arrived at to begin with were proposed, suggested by the leadership, particularly the chair, and the leadership goes along with it. I think that, you know, we need to hold him accountable for that. And we need to ask, you know, why he, based on what had occurred, why he should enjoy our confidence in a second term on this. Why he doesn't feel the need, he never felt the need to have, you know, to count every vote. And why even to this day, he still maintains that position and doesn't want to issue an apology. I guess I would say that I would turn this into an election issue, because it certainly is. He's being judged on his record. That's one thing I would do going forward. You know, I would say that there's a system here. We obviously, if we have a mail-in ballot system for the state and it's good enough for the state of California, the Democratic Party could do the same thing and also have a postmark with a 17-day grace period. And lastly, there is a chain of custody issue. If we maintain a mail-in system, we still have to be able to have a chain of custody security issue where people are able to also observe the counting and so on. I doubt that it's going to go to that, stay that way, because it cost us nearly $500,000 to do what we did, to undertake what we just did. And I have a feeling that it will be kind of a combination of in-person and probably some mail ballots in places, you know, where maybe distance is an issue. There's a lot that can go on, and it's obvious that we have to have an ongoing task force that starts like yesterday to make sure that some of the things that occurred never occur again.
I have a question. When will we know the results from the people that are finally being counted?
They have been posted.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like Matthew has a question.
Hi, Karen. So I have a question. What I want to know is, so we know there were like a lot of people who got their ballots late, but last I'd heard there were also a lot of people who never got their ballots at all. What's being done about that? Because it worries me that like the results in some districts, not necessarily 80-15, where it was really it would be basically impossible to overturn the results because of how distant they were. But I'm worried about districts where it was closer between who got elected as delegate and not, and also even even in 80-15, like who got elected as e-board rep because they changed the rules on how you select the e-board rep. Like here, and I assume in lots of other districts, that like they may have been a few votes difference, and I'm worried that could have affected the outcome, particularly in ones where it's even closer than 80-15. So I'm just wondering, anything being done at all about the fact some people never got their ballots, period?
As far as I know, and again, I'm not the party, so I don't know. Nothing is, as far as I know, nothing is being done about the people that didn't receive their ballots. I have friends, my own friends, people that did apply, and they applied in time, well within time, and they never received their ballots, and basically they got no response from the party, or they got a, basically some sort of a form, kind of standard email that said that the registration and the balloting period was over, and that was it. There was no explanation. So I think that is just unacceptable. I mean, we can't have a system that allows that anymore. I mean, yeah, I mean, again, this autopsy, which is, we definitely have to have an ADEM autopsy, is going to take a while, but it's worth taking the time to make sure that we account for every single little thing that happened and how that could have been avoided, and how we can never allow ourselves to be in a situation where that happens again. And let's not forget that we also had a lot of what we called forced registrations, where many people who never even applied or registered for a ballot received ballots. And that has to be looked into. There's a lot of accounting, reckoning and accounting for, and unfortunately, some of the people that were responsible for some of these things, reside in high places. And it's one of those things that people don't want to answer.
Okay, are there any more questions, or should we move on to the next speaker?
It looks like that's it.
Okay,
has a question.
Karen, thank you
Oh,
so much.
what was that, Michael?
for coming.
Joaquin has a question.
Okay,
Joaquin's raised his hand.
Joaquin, go ahead.
You have to unmute.
Still muted.
Sorry, oops, sorry.
You got it.
Well, just briefly, do you know why it costs so much, $250,000 or whatever? And are there any like legal actions to contest any of this stuff going on? And who do you recommend for a new party chair?
Working backwards, I think that Delane Easton is definitely worth looking at. I mean, I want to say that, looking at Chair Hicks's record, especially on this one and on his acceptance of the fossil fuel money, when the delegates were very, very clear about the mandate that had been given to him by a vote, a unanimous vote, a motion that was accepted and voted on unanimously. They need to look at a record, past his prologue. Secondly, I think that, what was your first question again?
Why did it cost $250,000?
Oh, yeah.
And are there any legal actions?
On the legal actions, the Democratic Party is like a private club. There are limitations about what we can do. That being said, however, I think it would be very interesting to see if there could be a civil rights lawsuit. Clearly people were disenfranchised. after all, like any public election, these delegates were elected just like if someone ran for, you know, a representative to the legislature. I think it would be interesting to see if they can have any kind of ground or traction on civil rights grounds, because they were denied that. They were disenfranchised. The last question, though, in terms of the money, they used Scantron, which is located in the Midwest, I believe, Minnesota. And so what happened is, besides that and the obvious, you know, you have data through PDI, a huge account, and a lot of the, I guess, I don't know, the counting for it every day, from what I understand, when they picked up ballots in their PO box, it was overnighted, from what I understand, to Scantron, and they had a contract with Scantron in Minnesota, and that's how they were counted. It's also how they were counted so quickly, the over 1,500 ballots, because they were already sitting in Minnesota. But I don't have an itemized breakdown on why it costs that much, but that should be part of the autopsy, shouldn't it? Yes. Oh, I'd like to say that I'll go ahead and put my email address in the chat. And if anyone has any questions, I know there are a few questions here in the chat, please send them to me. I'd be happy to answer them offline. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting if you'd like. And I know you probably know all of the candidates, but,
Yep.
but here we go. I'm going to first off introduce Susanna Williams, who's going to help introduce the actual candidates. So Susanna is currently chair of the Our Revolution group in Contra Costa County. Susanna?
Thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. Nice sunny Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting. And Carol has a fun announcement for everyone later on. And so I would like to introduce to you Melahat. And Melahat, if I am butchering your name, Rafe?
You're good.
Not good.
You're good.
I'm good. I'm good. Okay. I'm frantically Googling how do you pronounce your last name. Melahat is running for secretary of the California Democratic Party. And so without further ado, welcome, Melahat.
Thank you so much, Susanna. My name is Melahat Rafi'i. My pronouns are she, her. And, you know, my last name has been hard for me to pronounce, quite honestly. I'll tell you, we came here as immigrants. So whoever did our paperwork made a lot of decisions for us, including spelling of our names. And my legal birthday is different than my real birthday, because they told my parents if they wanted me to start school that year, I had to have a September birthday. So even though I was really born in November, my passport, my driver's license, everything says September. These are some of the things that immigrants go through. A little bit about me. I'm a former executive director of the Democratic Party of Orange County. I'm a two-term DNC member that proudly voted for Bernie Sanders as a delegate. I'm one of the 37 members who wrote the reform letter to the chair just recently, voted for the climate debate. And I'll tell you, if you think the CDP is bad, try the DNC. I mean, truly, we are just garnish and dressing. We make absolutely no decisions as delegates whatsoever. And it's one of the reasons I want to put my energy at the state party level, because I've been at the DNC 2 terms and I realized I made a big mistake by being such a huge whip for Keith Ellison and speaking out about Islamophobia and everything that happened during that campaign to the media, because folks know me, I'm a really good fundraiser. I like to raise a lot of money. And you'd think that the chair of the party would reach out to me and want help, but no, I picked the wrong horse, and that's why I was relegated to the just give us money, we're not gonna ask you for help. Beyond that. My day job is I'm a campaign consultant in Southern California, focused in Orange County, Long Beach, San Diego, and parts of Los Angeles. I focus on getting women of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and the disabled community elected. Just last cycle, 9 out of 10 of our clients won. We elected the first Muslim woman to be a mayor of a major American city in Irvine, the first woman of color in West Hollywood, the first Cambodian woman in Long Beach, the first Latina on the Tustin School Board, the first Black woman to become mayor of of a city in Orange County in Tustin, Letitia Clark, and the list goes on and on. I practice what I preach about making sure voices are at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. But background about me personally, my family came to America when I was 5 years old from Iran. I was 5, my sister was 3, my brother was 1. My parents took everything they had, put it in 2 suitcases, went with a set of smugglers and tried to get us out of Iran. A long story short, we ended up going from Pakistan to Israel to Italy and finally got asylum to the United States. By the time my parents got here, we were in Milpitas. So I don't know who's from the South Bay Area. We were in Milpitas, and we had $500. And if it wasn't, I mean, there was a Republican in the White House in 1983, but he wasn't a Nazi. And there were opportunities for my family to be here and exist through food stamps, through my mom going to learn English lessons, my dad getting vocational training. We were able to live. We've been here for 37 years. And because of their sacrifice, I'm a walking, talking example of the California dream. And I'm in front of you today to be part of the party leadership and fight for progressive values. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, some of the ones that Karen brought up. And I'd rather have you ask me questions than keep talking, because once I learned English, they said I talk too much. So I want to stop that habit. Oh, one more thing. I am endorsed by Ash Kalra, and I 100% support AB 1400 in CalCare.
All right. I just saw Ash on something on the internet the other night. Very impressive. Okay, who would like to ask some questions? Going once? Anything in the chat? Alfred.
Okay, Alfred has a question.
Sure. So a big issue with where the party gets its money in the past is fossil fuel money. How would you address that issue?
Well, Alfred, you know me a little bit because you were involved in the SEPI Shine for West Hollywood campaign. West Hollywood, for those of you who don't know, is a developer-run city. Our client who won SEPI Shine, being the first woman of color to be elected, also refused to take developer money. So you can win elections, top vote getter and everything, without making yourself feel dirty about it. So there's absolutely a way for us to go out there and get money. A lot of it is a lot of communities we haven't hit before. And we did a good job with low dollar money. We raised $2 million last year. I know the goal is $3 million this year. We can do more of that if we're involved in the local communities. If you're asking people to give you $10 a month, they want to know something about it, right? Like, partner up with your local center committee. So we're doing a donate every month that splits partially to the party, partially to the county, so that we're able to give more resources. There's way to be creative. I've been raising money since I got into politics because I'm not afraid of rejection. And when I became ED of the party in Orange County, we were $50,000 in debt using computers from the early 90s. And I raised money. I raised more money than anybody had ever raised before because I just asked everybody and made sure people felt like they had some ownership of what was happening with that money, what it was going to. It wasn't going to overhead. It was going to mailers or voter registration. And when you do that for donors, they feel more connected. So I absolutely think we should not be taking fossil fuel money. I think that there's a better way to raise the money. And I think that all of you will be more apt to give and support if we're not taking that dirty money in the first place.
All right. We have a question from Matthew Lewis. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah. So my question is, the chair of the California Democratic Party is in practice, not basically all powerful, almost a bit short of being an elected dictator. And they have, in order to change that power dynamic within the party, it requires people in power to challenge that structure, such as other CDP officers. If you're elected, what will you do to change the structure where basically, as I said, the chair is basically an elected party dictator?
Thanks for the question, Matthew. And, I think shared governance is the topic of this campaign. And absolutely, I'm glad that Daraka has made it such a talking point for everybody, and it's important. And over this time, I've thought about what I think would be the best solution. What I've come up with, just in my own head, without running it by anybody, without talking to anybody about it, is expanding the executive team. Our 20 regional directors could be part of that executive decision-making team. And every central committee that you have, I'm sure most of you are involved one way or another with the central committee, you know, the chairwoman, the chairman doesn't make an entire decision. They go to an executive board of 15 people, 10 people, one from every AD, however you do it. We can't have like 400 people like we have in our executive board, but I think a 25-member executive team that makes decisions about spending, all that sort of stuff, makes sense for a body of 4,500 people. You know, and that's just, again, I think it's important to have these conversations, but I would like to see something go into effect. You know, I think I'm on the rules committee. Duraco's proposals will come in front of us, and I hopefully will stay on the rules committee and I can help kind of guide that. But in my head, that's kind of what I came up with, Matthew. And before I get off, I want to make sure everybody knows that I have the endorsement of my very good friend Igor, who's on here. We've been working on campaigns since early 2000s. I won't age either one of us, but I'm really honored to have his endorsement.
All right. I see one more question. Susanna Williams has a question.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, Melahat. So this just kind of comes back to a little bit more of the in the traditional secretary role bucket. One of my biggest criticisms, and something I've heard often with the party in general, has been its lack of communication. Right. We referred to it as the secret handshake club when I first got involved in 2016 on the heels of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Many of us who have technical skills and marketing skills have offered our help. We've been consistently rebuffed. So what could you do, or what are your thoughts on making the communication better, more effective, making things more transparent? And what resources do you think you would need to make that happen?
That's a great question. You know, the traditional secretary's role is someone who is going to take the minutes and communicate with your membership. We have staff for that at the CDP for the most part, right? What I would like to do, the one thing the DNC does right, the one and only thing they've ever done right, is they do communicate with the membership about talking points, media things that we can use for amplification of the message for the campaigns and so on and so forth. And I'll tell you, if we are going to have this recall on our hands, and we will, it's going to get qualified. If we have any hope of stopping it, it's making sure that every Democratic ally has proper talking points to fight the misinformation. We can't do that the way we're doing it now, where everything is internalized and the decision making is just one person who decides which consultants we're going to use and what the messaging is going to be. We failed at messaging. Big time. We have not been talking to API voters properly. The way that Prop 16 was messaged in areas like where Harley Ruda lost and where Gil Cisneros lost to API women, in that we saw, I was running races with 2 API women. We saw what was going on in WeChat and other places where they were blaming Prop 16 and saying that the Democrats cared about Black people and brown people and not us. So those voices won't be heard if you don't have them at the table. You can have the best allies with the best intentions, but if you don't have the voices of people of color, of the LGBTQ community at the table, they're not going to be heard. But back to your question about communication, I think that there needs to be not just weekly, but almost daily communication, especially during the recall with our delegates, what's going on, what's happening. I figure the more communication, the better, because if you're not being communicated to, the voices in your head are going to fill in the blanks, and it's always the worst things that could possibly happen. So I don't think that the CDP is maliciously doing things wrong. I think where they're failing is communicating with the delegates about what's going on, keeping everybody in the loop, and giving them that respect. So I would do that. I'm not a shy person. And the resources I would need, you know, one, I raise money. So if they're going to expect me to raise money, I better have a voice on how that money is going to be spent. And I want to make sure that it's not my personal staff of my team of consultants that are doing this work, but that we have CDP staff dedicated to it. The first thing I want to do is get a debrief of what happened with ADEM and get a real understanding of our finances. I think we are short-staffed at the CDP tremendously. The people that work there are great, but they're short-staffed, and it's really unfair of us. We talk about workers' rights and working conditions, and the way we work these kids is not okay. So anyways, I answered everything else too. Sorry, Susanna.
Awesome. Yeah, you're good. Thank you. That was a great answer.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we're going to be moving on. People can, if you want to talk to her or email her, check the chat for her contact information, and she's got it down there. Anyway, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great Sunday.
All right.
Bye.
All right, we're ready for the next candidate. We have David Campos from San Francisco tonight. I think a lot of you know him. He's an attorney. He's former San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He's an immigrant from Guatemala. So immigrant issues are one of his things he's really interested in. He's a Stanford graduate. He termed out, he was 2 terms on the Board of Supervisors, and then he termed out. Anyway, so here's David.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all of you, these amazing progressive activists in the East Bay. Thank you for what you do. I'm just going to briefly say something about me, and for those who may not know me, as was noted, my involvement in democratic politics has a lot to do with my own personal story. My parents brought me here, escaping the civil war in Guatemala. I came here undocumented, and I lived as an undocumented person for many years of my life, including while I was going to Stanford. And that experience of living in the shadows is something that has really shaped my view of the world. I went to law school because, lawyers were the people who help people like me. And I always understood that the law degree could be an instrument for good, for helping other people. Since I graduated from law school, I have tried to dedicate my life to public service. As an attorney, I was the chief lawyer to the public schools in San Francisco. And then people convinced me to run for supervisor. And as a supervisor, I was proud to be, throughout my tenure, a progressive voice on so many different issues. I worked to make universal healthcare happen in San Francisco before it was a federal law. I worked to make public transit free for young people in San Francisco as a way of not only protecting the environment, but helping families that were struggling to stay in the city. I worked to, I voted against the Twitter tax break because I don't think that government should be helping corporations without helping small businesses. And on issue after issue, I stood firm as I think the most progressive voice on that Board of Supervisors. When I turned out, I went to work for Santa Clara County as a county executive, working on issues involving communities of color and racial justice. And I became chair of the party. And my tenure as chair of the party showed that the party can be used to advance progressive politics. I think that our work taking over the party from the corporate Democrats that controlled it showed the power of the Democratic Party. We elected a super majority of progressives on the Board of Supervisors. And I'm running to bring the same perspective and approach that I brought to San Francisco to the state party. I believe that I am the most progressive person running in California today. If you look at my politics and my history, I supported Bernie Sanders both times that he ran, 2016 and 2020. I was proud to come out for him, even though there was another San Franciscan running in that race. I came out as the chair of San Francisco to support him. I bring the perspective of a progressive who also has tackled complicated issues. The legislation that I passed on the Board of Supervisors was not easy to pass, and many of it overcame vetoes by Gavin Newsom. I think that kind of know-how is needed when we tackle governance reform. I do think that we need to reform the Democratic Party, but it's not just reforming it by transferring power from among the electeds and the central power of that party. I actually think that we need to have some of that power also go to the local parties and the regional directors. I think that what has been proposed doesn't go far enough. And I believe that I have the record to actually make it happen. And the last thing that I would say is that we need a Democratic Party that actually pushes a progressive agenda. That's what I have done in San Francisco. Before a progressive measure is passed at the Board of Supervisors, it actually goes to the party where we adopt it, advocate for it, and then lobby for it before the Board of Supervisors, before the mayor. That's what the state party should be doing. We're going to do that with universal healthcare and single payer. I passed a resolution putting that forward in San Francisco. I also created a healthcare committee within the San Francisco Central Committee so that these San Francisco Democrats can advocate in Sacramento on behalf of single payer. That's the vision that I bring. I know that there is another candidate that's running. I'm not really running against anyone. I simply bring the perspective, a new approach of how to push this progressive agenda forward in a principled way, but in a way that also gets results. And I believe that's what I bring. And that's why I think people like Kevin DeLeon is supporting me. The California Young Dems endorse me. And I would be honored to have the support of my fellow progressives in the Bay Area. So with that, I'll take your questions. Don't be shy.
Yeah, okay, looks like somebody, Igor? You can go ahead.
Hi, David. I'm
Hi.
so sorry. I know I owe you a call, and my apologies. But the question I was going to ask you, actually, I wanted to see if you could answer for the benefit of all of us. I appreciate that you said you're not running against anyone. The nature of the beast is you happen to be a challenger to someone who, in my estimation, has been one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive member of the current board. So my question to you is, what is one thing where you would agree with your opponent and think he's done a fine job, and one area upon which you would like to build and improve? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, I want to be very clear about that, because I understand that when you're running for the same office, that people think you're running against the other person, and that's not how I approach politics. I do think that I agree with his emphasis on the need to reform the governance of the party. I agree with that. I'm not sure that I specifically embrace the proposal that he has brought forward, because I think it doesn't go far enough. I think it focuses too much on central power, and it doesn't actually recognize the need to not only change the roles and responsibilities of the elected, but actually we need to diffuse power and send it to other parts of the state. And where I think I'm different is that, I think that a legislative experience is really important. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I think that when it comes to a proposal, the devil is in the detail. And I think that understanding how the legislative process it works is very important. And there are many things that I did, and let's talk about healthcare as an example. When we made that happen in San Francisco, we actually had a very clear understanding of the different, pressure points for a lot of the different players, and understood the kind of language that maybe could bring someone forward in a way that could lead to a different result. And I think that experience can be very useful here. But the other thing that I would say that I bring is that I also look for, besides the reform of governance, ways in which we can actually make things happen today. And the one area where I don't think that you need a bylaw change to make it happen is the support of the local central committees. The bylaws simply say you're there to support the chair. There is nothing inconsistent with that if you as vice chair, which is what I would like to do, help coordinate the central committees. The vice chair should have a clear sense of what the needs of every one of the 58 county central committees is, where the state can come in and help, and how they can help each other. Right now, there is a race in Orange County where they're trying to turn a seat from Republican to Democrat, a supervisor seat. We could be calling into that county and helping them. We did that in San Francisco. I think that's the kind of energy and vision that I bring that is a little different. And I think we all have a way of doing it. And that's my way of doing it. And that's why I think people who don't agree with my politics are supporting me, because they have seen how I can be principled and progressive and still get to results. But thank you for the question, Igor, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you, and I appreciated your response. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Matthew, you got a question?
Yeah, so I have very different questions for each of the other than self-identified female vice chair candidates. So this is my question for David Campos. So you're correct. You've done a lot of really advancing progressive politics in San Francisco as chair of the county party. However, randomly, I was on Cal Access doing just random research into campaign finances, and I happened to pull up campaign finances for, I don't even remember what, with some recent month during your chairpersonship of the San Francisco Democratic Party for the party. And I noticed that one of the expenditures for something such as accounting was to the law firm Jackson Lewis. For context, Jackson Lewis is the country's largest union busting firm, and there's no reason that any Democratic organization, even if it's paying for a service such as accounting, should ever be doing business with that law firm. It and the people who work there are completely against our values as Democrats if we truly support labor unions. So regardless of whether like that's the contract that like maybe was signed before your chairpersonship, whether you win or lose the state party vice chairship, will you pledge that you will make sure that the San Francisco Democratic Party and also the state party never signs any kind of new contract or contract renewal with Jackson Lewis or any other union busting firms?
Well, I will say this, that I don't know what specifically you're talking about, but I'm very proud of my record as chair in terms of who I have contractual relationships with and who I get money from. The Democratic Party was in control of corporate Democrats in San Francisco, so I don't know if that was a contract that they signed. But I certainly, labor is actually our biggest ally in San Francisco. I actually have members of the Labor Council that are on the Central Committee that ran on this slate. So that is simply unacceptable. And one of the things that I'm the proudest of as chair of San Francisco is that there are so many people that we don't take money from. Not only do we not take money from oil, from tobacco, we don't take money from actually corporations that exploit people. And a lot of the more corporate Democrats get funded by tech, big tech. We don't take money from big tech. Sometimes a contribution, slips through, and there was someone that actually had evicted someone that ended up making a contribution. And the moment that we found that out, not only do we return the contribution, but we made a contribution to lawyers that defend tenants as a way of making that, making that example. And that's the philosophy that I bring to the state party. We should not be taking money from fossil fuel. We should not be taking money from Juul. We should not be taking money from anyone whose values go against who we are as Democrats. And that's how I approach it. I'm very proud of that. And that's the record that I bring to the California Democratic Party.
Just to confirm, though, will you pledge that whenever the contract expires, that you will make that, assuming that you are still chair, because it could, I don't know, maybe it's a 20-year contract, but like assuming if it expires when you are still chair, that you will fight to make sure that the contract is not renewed?
Well, I mean, I think that if there's any contract with anyone whose values doesn't reflect what I just said, I don't want that contract. And so you have my pledge that that contract will not be renewed, but to the extent that it can be terminated, it will be terminated. I do not want a contract with anyone whose work is not aligned with the values of the Democratic Party in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question before we move to the next candidate. Is there another question?
Yeah, I had one. Just getting back to what Karen was saying about the ADEM elections, like, do you have any thoughts on how to fix that or any approaches for that?
Thank you for the question. And I actually have spoken about this, and besides being a former supervisor, I'm also an administrator. I was a county administrator in Santa Clara. And right now, by the way, I'm chief of staff to District Attorney Chase Abudin, and I run the day-to-day operations of that office. And so operations are important to me. What I think should happen with ADEMs, and I do think that we have to improve this process, And by the way, I think that anyone who was in any way involved with that process should take responsibility that it needs to be better. Not just the chair, but I think that anyone who had a leadership role should acknowledge that something went wrong. I think the first thing that should happen in terms of like good practices is that there should be an external audit of what went wrong. I mean, I think she talked about an autopsy. I don't know if I would use that term, but I think that an operational external audit by a third-party independent player should be done so that we can understand the ins and outs of exactly what went wrong. I don't think that it's because the staff did a poor job. I think that they probably were doing the best they could. But as a supervisor, having headed the government oversight committee, you can learn a lot by actually asking a third party, hiring a third party who has nothing to do, no connections with anyone, to do a deep dive into what went wrong. That should inform how we move forward, because the operations of running an election is a fundamental piece of the party. And if people cannot respect the integrity of that, it really impacts a lot of the work of the party. So that would be my suggestion, because I don't think that we know all the things that went wrong. In my own case, it took me a while to get my ballot. I had to request it a number of times. I finally got it, but I never got confirmation that the ballot was actually counted. So I think that doing an external audit would be the first thing that I would do, and then figure out what changes need to be incorporated based on those the results of that audit.
No more hands. Okay, well, David, thank you so much for coming. And I hadn't mentioned it earlier tonight, but we will be sending out ballots for members to vote on who we should endorse for this.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the consideration, and thank you for what you do. And again, thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on now. Susanna's going to introduce the next candidate.
Great, thank you, Carol. Duraka's here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
looking on this. Oh, there he is. I see him. Yay. I was like, I want to introduce somebody who isn't here yet. Okay, so I am very privileged to introduce the incumbent second vice chair of the CDP and current candidate for vice chair, Duraka Larimar Hall. Duraka, ironically, was probably one of the first people that I met who was willing to give me the time of day at that now infamous Long Beach Executive Board meeting back in 2016. I kind of showed up, said, hey, I'll dress nice, join a few caucuses, see what happens. He's been a progressive voice, which I personally greatly appreciate. I've loved hearing some of his ideas on restructuring the California Democratic Party's officers and getting more people involved. Duraka is, if you don't know him, he is a political consultant, campaign organizer. I'm pretty jealous of this. He works a lot in Sweden and Norway. So I see a lot of those posts. I'm like, dang, that's a nice gig. He's been the chair of the Santa Barbara Central Committee for a number of years. And without further ado, Duraka, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, sister. And hello, siblings, brothers, sisters. It's really great to talk to you tonight. I want to try to be brief so we can have as much time for questions as possible. Yeah, my name is Duraka. I'm an organizer, a movement baby. I was raised, before I could walk, I was in a stroller marching against interventions in Central America and, everything that Ronald Reagan was up to. And that's really been my life's work, has been about strengthening grassroots progressive institutions and movements. My first job out of college was as the national youth organizer for the Democratic Socialists of America. And I've been a proud socialist and progressive working in the labor movement and the Democratic Party now for a couple of decades. And, really, I think the most important thing about being a progressive officer in the Democratic Party or leader in the Democratic Party is to use that position to empower the grassroots. And that's by giving people the information about how power really works in the Democratic Party. Susanna mentioned that. I'm the guy that you can go to in the convention when you're like, why is this happening? What's going on? But I'll give you the straight scoop on where the lines of power are. Because to me, this is all about transforming our institutions and transforming our country, not just putting sort of cooler people into positions. And so, you know, some examples of that, when the legislature tried to vote themselves the ability to take unlimited amounts of corporate money and control it completely separate from the party. Even though the Democratic Party was officially against it, I was the only officer willing to go and testify against it and lead grassroots lobbying efforts by party activists to stop it. I've been obviously a very big critic of the centralization of power and decision-making in this party, and last year proposed a series of bylaws reforms that would give all of the officers actual accountable, you know, verifiable jobs and duties and roles. And I think most importantly, give the body, the executive board and the convention, the right not just to have a say in what the Democratic Party thinks or officially stands on issues, but actually put resources behind lobbying, organizing, and pushing for our platform to become actual law. And that's where I want to kind of wrap it up, because I'd love to get into your questions. But to me, you know, the most exciting thing about Bernie Sanders' campaign, and I supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, I supported Elizabeth Warren this last time around. What I liked about both of them is that they talked about system change, and specifically Bernie Sanders' you know, vision for our revolution of being a force for transforming the Democratic Party, I think is super important. And I want to continue to be a voice for that transformation in detail specifically, and an ally and comrade of yours as we push for that from the bottom up. So would love to hear any questions or comments, thoughts. Why they're silent on, I see a question in the comments. Should I just comment on that?
Oh, wait, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so ADEMs. So ADEMs this year, I think were a particular disaster, an embarrassing disaster for the party. You know, the long and short of it is that we had an election in which we spent, you know, at least $150,000 printing ballots that went straight into people's garbage cans, and still didn't let everybody who wanted to vote. That's just a complete failure. And I agree with my opponent that, yeah, it's like the party's failure, but it also, the decision points, I've tried to be really frank about where the decision points have been behind the scenes and with the party. And the fact is that staff brought up the fact that they were getting tons of registrations that were obviously third party. They asked what should be done about it. The chair said, ask the rules committee. Someone from the rules committee said, go ahead, it's okay. And then when people, when it came before the officers, I was the only vote to do an audit then, before it was a problem and before we had to go back and then try to unverify election results. So to me, there are two really big lessons from ADEMs. One is we need to get ADEMs back to what they were originally designed to be, which is a voice for a contest between and for grassroots party activists. And if we were to envision ADEMs as the electorate being everyone in clubs, everyone in affiliated groups, everyone who volunteers on campaigns, that would, I think, solve the problem of the huge advantage that elected officials have when the voting pool is just however many Democrats you can mass upload into the system. So that's what I favor, is like going back to something we used to do that worked pretty well. And then second, or like sort of related to that, is that we need real checks and balances in our leadership so that we can, like, as I tried to put it, you know, weeks and weeks ago, so that we can do like preventive surgery on a problem instead of just having to do an autopsy every time and bring in expensive outsiders to come in and tell us what we did wrong, when there were a ton of people in the mix who said this is wrong, but none of them have a say. As vice chair, what would I do to help make CalCare a reality? Well, I mean, I'm always going to be adding my voice to any push to make single-payer healthcare and Medicare for all a reality in California. But I think we often really overestimate the power of the bully pulpit of one officer. And the real question is, why is it that the Democratic Party has been for single payer healthcare for 15 years. We have not expended one staff hour, $1 on making it a reality from the party's resources. And the reason for that is the only person who can authorize that is the chair. And it doesn't matter how, you know, awesome and charismatic the vice chair or the secretary is. If the chair doesn't want to do that lobbying and that organizing, we don't do it. And no chair has wanted to do that. In fact, the only legislative advocacy that we've done since I've been an officer, it was against AB 84. And again, I was the only one who was willing to go to the Capitol and actually put my face on it. So I think we need to change that structure so that when the legislation committee votes to support a bill, they can also send a directive to the executive board, and the executive board can vote on directing the officers to go get that work done. That's how a democratic organization should work. Not that we elect one person who then decides on all of our political priorities.
Okay, we have a question from Matthew Lewis.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna start my question with a short bit of background, just for everybody else on the call so that they understand. So for context, the previous party chair, Eric Bauman, had to resign a few years ago, about 2 years ago, after it basically came out that he was engaging in serial sexual misconduct. So that's the quick background. So when basically those rumors started leaking out, you were one of the first people to call for him to resign. I think you filed charges within the party structure against him. However, after he had resigned and everything, it came out that you had been as vice chair, you had been discouraging people. People filed lawsuits against the party, and you were discouraging them from continuing with those lawsuits.
So that's not true. Can I just, if your question is going to be based on a really painful and unfair and untrue assertion, I hope, can you get to the question part quicker?
Yeah, I will get. Well, that is the base of the question. Is given the accusations that you asked multiple people to drop their lawsuits against the party.
There wasn't even that accusation, but go ahead.
Given those accusations, as well as the fact that the other candidate in the race is also very progressive, how should we feel comfortable voting for you, as opposed given those serious accusations? Which again, I want to be very clear, these are not accusations that Daraka made any kind of sexual misconduct, but it was that he encouraged people to drop their lawsuits. So that's my question.
Well, and I've been telling people as this comes up, and we talk about this. The first thing I want to say, I've been trying to write some stuff about this because it's been 2 years now in which this party has refused to have any kind of truth and reconciliation process for what happened around Eric Bauman and the years of really horrible conduct that many people, including myself, failed to call out and recognize. And that's a conversation we really have to have as a party community, but we haven't had a chance to do that except in like chair race forums and so forth. And so there's like a lot of misinformation out there and really tons of facts that have just never been brought to light. And that's a process I've been calling for and has been rejected by both of the chairs that have come since Bauman's resignation. But here's just a couple of things. One is that, it wasn't that there were rumors that I acted on and charged Eric Bauman. I was given firsthand information about extremely believable, credible reports of abuse, ranging from verbal misconduct to just inappropriate comments to staff to rape by intoxication. And that was the information that came to me that spurred me to action to file charges against him and call for his resignation publicly. After he resigned, some of the survivors of Eric's abuse filed lawsuits, and I'm very glad that they did and wished them nothing but luck. One of those lawsuits had some information in it that I think was written by the attorney that just really, I didn't think was fair, not only to me or my role, but also other victims and whistleblowers. And so I talked with other victims. We had been talking for months together, and asked if that could be corrected, if that could be changed, something like that, or if the filings could be separated because different people were making different filings. You know, I really regret doing that. It was a moment of panic, but and fear, because there was just these weird things in those lawsuit filings that like I said, really were damaging to people that shouldn't have been damaged. But we really need to get back to talking about, you know, again, the core question, which is, how was an abuser allowed to have a position of great power in this party for so long? And that's where we need a safe space to be honest about things, because there are, I think, hundreds of people in this party who, like myself, you know, one of the first times I ever met Eric Bauman, he pushed me up against a wall and was like kissing my neck and grabbing my private parts. Why didn't I report that or even conceptualize that as abuse? And I think part of the reason that it took a lot of people a long time to come forward or even think about it as abuse in their own lives was because of how politicized and weaponized any talk around Bauman's misbehavior had become. So I really welcome more conversation about this. I plan to be a lot more forthcoming since the lawsuits have been settled about my perspective and my experiences. But I really, really ask that people stop sort of using this as like things that we haven't talked about just as a way to sort of wrong foot people in internal elections. I think the reason that you should vote for me is that I've been a courageous voice for change, that I've spent a ton of political capital fighting against the powerful to make sure that there's more democracy in this party. I haven't always agreed with everybody about everything, and I have very strong opinions, and I argue as much and as vociferously with leftists as I do with centrists, because that's the tradition I come out of. But I really think if you look at my record from starting as a grassroots activist, as a county party chair, and as a statewide officer, it's been democratizing this party that has been the through line. And that goes all the way back to when Karen Bernal and I were screaming and yelling just to be able to get resolutions passed. But now we have to scream and yell and organize so that our resolutions are actually put into action. And that takes change. So anyway, thanks for the question. But let's have that conversation, I think, in a way that's about healing and justice.
Okay, with that, we're going to need to move on to the next candidate. Thank you so much for coming here and being here with us.
Thank you for your work and good luck.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Susanna?
Thank you, Carol. So the next candidate I'd like to introduce to you is Jenny Bach. Jenny is the incumbent secretary of the California Democratic Party. She is a daughter of immigrants. She hails from just north of where I am in the Sacramento area. In 2017, Jenny was elected as the first young Dem to be elected to the party in like 20 years. So we need to work on that. She has been a very strong progressive voice, which I personally appreciate. She's also a voice for the API community. She has worked and is currently working as a consultant. She's been a field organizer in the areas of education, outreach, and campaign. So Jenny, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for the intro, Susanna. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coordinating this and inviting me to be here. My name is Jenny Bach, pronouns she, her, hers, and I've served as the CDP secretary now for the past 4 years. And I'm running for vice chair, and I would like to share more about my background as well as some of my ideas and goals with you. So as Susanna mentioned, I currently work in program management with nonprofits on food security issues and with organizations that train and mentor API candidates for office throughout the state. I'm the daughter of Vietnamese refugees, and growing up in an immigrant working class household, I've helped translate everything for my parents, from our bills to their first ballots. My family story is like so many of our other Californians throughout the state, and has really driven me to do the work that I've done since an early age. Also, as mentioned, in 2017, I was elected to serve as party secretary is the first young Dem to be elected as an officer in over 20 years. Prior to that, there were two young men. So it's been a while, and I would like to continue being representative of the youth base as a party leader. And as an activist and leader of this party, who has been a direct pipeline, I've prioritized working on trainings from youth engagement to talking to folks about the party infrastructure, having a lot of convenings during executive board meetings. I'll have my own separate either training or roundtable just to talk about how we can increase communications and be more accessible. And definitely, I love meeting with newer folks who come into the party to talk about, what our infrastructure looks like, what the bylaws look like, and do a cool intro round. As party vice chair, there are several key issues I'd like to focus and work on. First, we should really address the best safety measures as our activists really organized during this pandemic. And, the party has to be able to give out more accessible information about vaccines and public benefits for our most vulnerable communities. We also need to work on addressing, misinformation and disinformation that hasn't just been a threat to our democracy, but also to public health. I mean, look, we saw ballot boxes that were being destroyed and vandalized during this past election cycle. Misinformation has spread about the vaccine, and ethnic news media talking about, microchips being carried into the bloodstream. That's a danger to our public health. And I've also seen a lot of Gavin Newsom recall folks posted up at convenience stores and also grocery stores, giving out pretty bad information to folks as they're, going out doing their shopping. So, it's alarming. As a party, we need to combat this. We have to strengthen our presence in communities in all reaches of the state. We should also partner and have more of a presence in ethnic news media and partner with our trusted messengers on the ground to really carry out the right information for folks. And as a party, I think we also need to address affordability. Working families and activists should not have to choose between being involved while struggling to pay with their rent and bills. This is why, as a party, we have to push for policies like, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, yet we have one of the highest rates of poverty also in this country. So we definitely need to do a better job at addressing this. And being a kid of immigrants, immigration issues are a huge priority to me. And, as a party, we need to help support our immigrant activists to ensure that, they have their voting rights in the next ADEMS elections and also have their voices heard in our party process. But lastly, I, as a young Democrat, I think that it's of the utmost importance that we really build our pipeline of young leaders. We need to map out what, term limits look like, what positions are open, but we really should be encouraging more young people to run for local offices, and then also, readying them up, or if interested, for a higher legislative office. And build out that pipeline. So thanks again for having me this afternoon. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm also proud to have been endorsed by leaders like Igor Trigub, Alfred Twu, and the California Young Democrats. And I look forward to connecting with all of you and hearing from all of you as well. Thank you.
Okay. Questioning is open if anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment.
Yeah, my question is just in line with the ADEMs and the recent elections and let's say incompetence that happened. Like, what do you see needing to be done to fix that and bring integrity back to that process?
Sure. Thanks for your question. It was the first time this has happened, and you've probably heard this from the other candidates already, that we really had to have a quick turnaround on things. As a party, as an officer, we decided to extend the deadline for the ADEMs. I was totally supportive of counting every ballot and vote, and I had encouraged delegates who had written to me as the secretary, the official complaint box, I call it sometimes, because people give me feedback or send in either a complaint or removal process to me. So I was receiving a lot of messages about how unfair this was. I hear that. I also agree that anything turned in by the February 3rd deadline and was postmarked by then, even if it came in after, should have been counted. So I'm glad that they went through the CRC process and decided on that as well. I also think that, because it was not in person, we should have been able to allow folks to, have access to, voter files who had agreed to vote in this process. It's only fair because that has happened in an in-person ADEMS meeting. Voters are able to hear from candidates directly. So because that was a little bit cut off, I'm pretty sure there were more folks who had an advantage in that situation than others. And to streamline this process, I would explore doing more of an online ballot. I know that we also need to support our USPS system, but in times like this, when it was so inundated, it was very difficult to do that. And also, the officers and I had a discussion. I know Daraka just mentioned this in his remarks as well. But we had not agreed to having a third party come in to audit this process. I do think that we need to reassess what happened and what happened in those districts that came back with weird results. But I also didn't believe at the time, for the sake of transparency, that we should have any candidate for an officer position reviewing these ballots as well. I understand there's good intention behind that, but I don't think even the current chair who's running for something, or even our current vice chair should even have access or look at this. Not because I'm saying that any foul play would happen, but just for the sake of transparency, it needs to be looked at by someone unrelated to us. But moving forward, I do think that we need to address these issues more quickly and be more open to the feedback that we're going to get from all of you on how that went as well. I hope that answered your question.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jake.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that was a good answer.
Oh, okay. So I just want to remind everyone that you can either raise your hand or post in the chat if you have a question. And right now, let's see, we have a couple. Igor, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, Jenny. And, in full disclosure, I've already made an endorsement. It's of you. And that's because that has been my experience when a number of folks in AD 15 asked me to sign a petition to get 1,500 new votes counted for folks that would have previously been disenfranchised if they weren't counted. And I asked you, I'm inclined to sign this. Can you just give me the background on this? And you gave me the background. And then you said, yeah, if I were in your role, I would sign this petition. So thank you very much, Jenny. And my question is very quick. Your answer will be shorter than my question. Who did you support in the March 2020 presidential primary?
I supported Bernie Sanders, or Senator Sanders. So thank you for your question, Igor, and for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And stay safe. I know you're out there with the mask right now. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay, Matthew?
Hi, Jenny. Here's my question. So as you've mentioned and other folks have mentioned, you're currently one of the five CDP statewide officers, specifically the secretary. It is de facto true. It's de facto true that the chair of the party is, in practice, very much all powerful, almost akin to something like an elected dictatorship. We saw that with former Chair Bauman, with former acting chair Rooks, and we see it now with current Chair Hicks. My question is, what as an officer for the state, one of the five statewide officers for the past year, what have you done to try and challenge this structure and try to further democratize the party? And if you are, and if you are elected to this high-ranking position, which would give you more of a platform to do things like that, what will you do to further democratize the party?
Oh, thanks for your question. I have read the proposals that were sent into the Rules Committee, and I have even given feedback to Daraka and some other folks on my thoughts on that. I do think that we need to have more shared power and responsibility, and my reason for that is because it's an accountability issue. You know, if we don't have job roles, we can essentially just be there with the title, like sitting ducks, and not be held accountable for actually doing the things that are dictated in the bylaws for us to do. So I do support, decentralizing that power. And it's because, when we go from chair to chair, depending on who that person's going to be, they're going to have different leadership styles. And I think in order to change that kind of process, we actually need to make those changes in the rules. And, I've still picked up my shovel for the past 4 years. I still have picked up projects since, like I mentioned, I'm passionate about youth engagement. I still have provided trainings for our youngest activists, but also to anyone who would like to learn more about the party structure and get involved. I've committed to doing that, and I still continue to commit to doing that. But I think it would be more clear on what we're held accountable to once elected, to have more responsibilities, and to also share that with our delegates on the ground, to have more representation. For example, like this whole proposal is going through Rules Committee right now, but the members of the Rules Committee have also been appointed by the chair or the past chairs or whatever that is, which with all due respect, they're all amazing folks, but it's almost counterintuitive, right, on the folks making decisions on what is right now presented in front of them if they're not in agreement with it. And that's just, I'm saying that in a hypothetical way, if that comes up in the future with any kind of issue. So, we need to be careful of that and have more of a checks and balances structure in order to do that. Thanks for your question.
We have time for maximum of one more question, if there's somebody that has a question ready right now. If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Kind of rolling up one of Susanna's last questions for Daraka, and also something that Daraka said about having staff people actually working on the platform and the policies for those for the platform. So how would you try and push the chair to do that? Or is there a way to do that from around him, or?
To have staff members work on the platform?
Well, to have people actually doing something about the policy in the platform.
Sure.
Instead of, nothing.
Sure. No, I appreciate your question. I do think that we have to push on our party platform more. I mean, it was written by the folks who put in so much work and time, money, and energy into this party, and have voted on it, have worked pretty meticulously on it. So I do think that folks should abide by our platform to be a member of this party. And furthermore, I do think that we definitely should open up more of a lobby corps of some sort, or advocacy arm, to actually push these through. And I see that more coming from, us as members more than staff, because I'm sorry, but I'm just not understanding like what you mean by what staff should have to do with it, since, they're not going to be pushing, the chair on it if it's not a priority. But I do think that, the push of what we want to do comes from us too. And that means really going in and either making these petitions, calling the chair, having folks really organize around issues. So, I mean, please help me understand too if I'm not addressing the right part.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It was a little confusing. It was not confusing. It's more vague, because Daraka said, "Have we ever had anyone on had it budgeted for staff to do the advisory or the policy briefs, whatever is needed to be done to actually get that through. Maybe if Duraka could clarify a little bit if he's still on the call.
Yeah, and I can follow up too and ask him what he means by that. Our organization definitely has, politicos who are hired, or consultants who are hired for campaigns and other work as well. So, because our current party staff, they have very specific, roles, and a lot of it's also administering so much of the work that we do. So I'm just a little bit unclear about your question, but I'll clarify and I can follow up too.
Okay, cool. That works.
Okay. In answer, Duroc is no longer on the call.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think that kind of ends this segment. Jenny, thank you so much for being here. So tomorrow, probably late tomorrow, we will be sending out ballots to people who are official members of our Revolution East Bay. And people will be able to vote for Melahat, who is running, I believe, for treasurer. But I could be wrong. Somebody said secretary. We'll have to check that out. Then the other three candidates that spoke tonight are running for two different positions. Jenny, who just spoke, is running for the female person to be vice chair, and both Duraka Lattimore Hall and David Campos are running for the non-female space. So when you get your ballot, you'll only be able to vote for one person on the slot for the David and Duraka are running for. So just so people understand that. Okay, we're going to move on to something exciting. Are you guys ready? I don't hear any excitement. Okay, so.
Woohoo!
All right, thank you, Mark.
For being good, we're on mute. Come on.
Yeah. So we formed a long time ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been constantly, we have these incredible ideas of things we'd like to do, but even with the grassroots people and the board, we never have enough people to even consider a lot of things. And that's kind of been discouraging. At the same time, our Revolution Contra Costa has been going through the same kind of things. They've got all these dynamic people out there doing as much as they can. And we're overlapping here and there and trying to support each other in different ways. Well, what's actually happened? We've decided to merge as one group. We haven't got everything worked out, but we have, the boards from both OR groups have agreed that we are going to work together and put together a really, really strong Revolution East Bay, which will include Contra Costa and Alameda County. And who knows where else. Anyway, so I just wanted to let you all know that. And if anybody'd like to make a comment, we'd like to hear you.
I think that's a great idea for those of us in Contra Costa.
Uh-huh. Where do you live, Bill?
In El Cerrito.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Carol, this is Ruskell.
Hi, Ruskell.
Yes, I support the decision. Having been a member along with many of you, I think it'll make us a bigger force in the East Bay, and also support more of our progressive candidates in the future.
Yeah, there's so much that we want to do. And working together, we can do everything.
It looks like Alfred has a question.
Alfred.
I just want to say that I think it's a great idea. So many of the issues we work on are regional, and it makes sense that we work together.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, I think this is probably a really good idea. One thing I am wondering about though is when we go back to when the pandemic ends and we likely go back to having meetings in person, though it's possible we'll keep meeting by Zoom. It'll be a bit of a we have to figure out where we're going to be having our meetings, or maybe we're going to like have an Alameda County branch and a Contra Costa branch. I know Silicon Valley DSA does something like that. We'll have to figure that out so that folks aren't traveling too far to make them to make meetings.
Yeah, we've started talking about that, and we are going to continue meetings by Zoom because it seems like it's so much easier for everybody, and you can sit and have your coffee or whatever, and you don't need to drive or take public transportation. You can just be comfortable at home, and then maybe like every few months have a big event somewhere, and we can carpool and stuff.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say was I think we need to set up some type of regional structure, like get all the chapters in the Bay Area to form some type of structure as well, and ultimately a state org. Because DSA just made a state structure, and we really need to build up our regional, by which I mean Bay Area, not East Bay. We need to build up a regional and ultimately a state structure, like formal ones. Beyond,
yeah,
like,
we're kind of working on something like that for the state. I mean, it's in its infancy, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, actually, on Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock, there's a statewide our revolution meeting, and not a lot of people are coming to it yet, but a number of people are coming. And like one thing that we have agreed on is we agreed on Delane Easton, and now our Revolution National is going to have her on, I think, a week from Monday, and support and endorse her. Okay, Sherry Johansson.
Well, I am just so excited about this, and I just want to say that as one of the steering committee members of the Alameda Progressives, which is an OREB Revolution Chapter 2, we are really excited about this and support a regional union of all of the chapters. So hopefully we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk about it soon.
Looks like I think Sudia has her hand up too.
Oh, Sudia.
Oh, you're muted. Or
no, she's not muted.
Oh, you might be too far away from the microphone. Pull it closer to you.
I still can't hear you.
Never have trouble.
Sudia, you're silent.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Now we can hear you.
Now? Can you hear me now?
Okay. Nah, perfectly, yeah.
Yes.
Let's say, hopefully.
Yes? Okay. I was just going to say that we've been tuning in to the Monday night national our revolution meetings at 5:30. And it's really exciting just to know and feel that our revolution is happening all over the country. And different representatives, different states, different people come on, and it's just really exciting to know goes beyond the Bay Area. So I recommend it.
Special elections going on right now.
And there's special elections going on everywhere. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Carol, Ruskell.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was thinking now that or East Bay and Contra Costa are working on merging. And then coming off of our ADEM delegate elections, what does OR East Bay envision in terms of working with the elected delegates? I would suggest like having like a virtual community event with them to like, now that they're elected,
Do you
hear
mean
their
all the
plan.
delegates in the East Bay, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, all the newly elected delegates.
You know, that's a great idea.
Yeah, maybe we should just introduce them at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's a strong possibility.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there's delegates all the way from Vallejo to Martinez to Concord to past Fremont, Union City, Berkeley, Oakland,
Yep.
El Cerrito, Richmond, everywhere.
Yeah, you've added another central committee delegate pool, not to mention appointed, and there's some good progressives getting appointed. And then you've got 80s 11, 14, and 16, where we have a lot of really good progressives. So we've got multiple e-board slots. We've got central committee positions. Contra Costa has three progressives on the central committee. So yeah, I think that's a great idea to get everybody together.
Yep. Anyway, so we have to sort out a lot of things, but we have agreed to make it work and find a way to make it work.
Carol, I see Joaquin has his hand up.
Okay, Joaquin.
You gotta unmute.
You're silent, Joaquin. Please unmute.
Sorry.
You're up.
Originally, I was not really for this because we have such sort of distinct politics from East Bay, Berkeley, Oakland, and then Contra Costa. And somebody said, like, you know, all politics is local, and we're going from a grassroots organizing model with Bernie and doing phone banking from people who are coming to meetings, riding their bicycles, and, you know, it's a local grassroots thing. And I don't keep track of all the stuff that's going out in Concord and Antioch and whatnot. I do as much as I can, but so I don't want this to substitute for us trying to organize. When we organize, we win. We don't want this to substitute for organizing our local base, because it's always easier to organize among the organizers. You know, so I think we have to guard against that. We may want to still have distinct meetings once the pandemic is over and all that. So I think it's great that we're trying to hook up nationally on the Monday night, you know, Zooms, and the Thursday night California OR Zooms, and regionally Bay Area. So it's good, but we got to keep up the local aspects. And we haven't still made inroads like in Oakland very much. We've been sort of a Berkeley, you know, Richmond's strong, Berkeley's pretty strong. We don't have much going on in Oakland, so we got to think about how do we organize to win. So yeah, but I'm up for it. I think in some ways it'll strengthen us. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Joaquin. We have time for one more, and then we've still got a whole bunch of stuff we got to cover, guys. So next is Suraj.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
All right. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Just along the same line the previous speaker has spoken, we need to give the flexibility. Now we have this new means being on the Zoom, but also if people in the local city or community in nearby areas, they want to get together, then they should be able to get together. And the rest of the members who cannot travel or they have some other things going on, they can join by Zoom. So we need to keep the, so to speak, a hybrid setting. So whoever wants to come in person, they can come in person whenever, and whoever does not have time to travel or whatever, then they can join by Zoom. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gordon, you got 1 minute. We really got to move on.
Okay, Alameda and Contra Costa County are frequently kind of lumped together. It's you've got a suburban band and the Central Valley band, and they seamlessly merge when you go down the 80 and you go down the 680. So this is natural. It's also a chance to combine the capabilities of the memberships of the two groups. And final comment, combined meeting place near a BART station. Yield.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on now. Thanks for all of your comments and welcome to the all new group. Let's go kick ass. Okay, so where we're at now, we have a couple people who are going to speak about TOPA, T-O-P-A, which is probably going to be on the ballot one of these days, to empower renters so they have options of maybe buying some places together when they become available. Anyway, so we've got Matthew, Lewis, and Paola Laverde are going to talk first, followed by Alfred. Okay, go for it, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to go
first. We have
first.
to limit time to maybe about 7 minutes, just because there's so much going on. Okay, go ahead.
Sure, I'm going to go first if that's okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. Paola Laverde here, Berkeley Rent Board Commissioner and also a representative on the Central Committee. So TOPA is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. It gives tenants the right of first offer and refusal. So that means that when the landlord decides to sell their property, the tenant has the first right to try to buy it. Alternatively, the tenant can assign their rights to a qualified organization, such as a land trust, to make the offer. You know, if they give it to the land trust, you know, the land trust has the opportunity to buy the property, and for purposes of stabilizing housing for tenants and preserving the property as permanently affordable. So it is coming before the Committee on Land, the Land Use Committee on March 18th. Now, what's so important about TOPA that it covers all rental units. So duplexes, fourplexes, fiveplexes, 10plexes, if the tenants can get together and decide they want to buy the property, and it gives them the time to do it. It gives them extended timelines. They'll get assistance to be able to buy the property. And if it's and if they get money from the city, if they get subsidized from the city, it can be permanently affordable. So very important. Also very important because it covers single family homes and condominiums. And you know, single family homes now are big ticket price, big ticket price in Berkeley. So this gives the tenants that first opportunity to purchase that house. It's still sold at market rate, but it allows an opportunity for the tenant to get in there and have a chance to buy it. And in Berkeley, thanks to Measure MM, we've identified, the rent board identified 1,940 single family homes and condos that could come under TOPA, where the tenants could actually try to buy it. So it is really a great program. It fits into the mayor's framework for housing framework that was passed. Well, it was it's stalling right now, but it was written by Sophie and Sophie Hahn and the mayor. It's a great framework to how housing should be done in Berkeley and housing, you know, the organization of our housing. So it's a great framework. So yes, TOPA, March 18th. Thank you. Matthew, up to you.
Sorry, if Alfred's going to also speak about TOPA, I'll wait till after that to talk, because I'm going to mostly focus on the other thing.
Well, no, you go ahead and do your thing now, Matthew.
Okay, yeah. So we really want our Revolution East Bay to endorse TOPA join. And the other thing that B2 would like to, Berkeley Tenants Union would like our Revolution East Bay to join us in supporting is our position on allowing fourplexes in the city. So members of the Berkeley City Council have put forth without talking to B2, have put forth a proposal to upzone the city to allow for fourplexes everywhere throughout the city. So like if something only allows right now single family homes, the idea would be like fourplexes. But unfortunately, they didn't talk with the Berkeley Tenants Union or any other social justice organizations about doing this in an equitable way. So so the way that they're pushing this out, there's a real risk that we're going to see, for instance, the demolition of older, more affordable housing and resulting in replaced with unaffordable market rate fourplexes. Berkeley Tenants Union does not oppose upzoning for fourplexes, but what we do oppose is upzoning without affordability. And when we've put forth 5 demands that we want, like they need to be included in this in order to make sure that it doesn't cause further gentrification and displacement, and make sure that this is a equitable measure. Unfortunately, when the council members who are pushing this have been basically completely uninterested in our demands and have actually responded with misinformation campaigns. For instance, the original proposal had nothing prohibiting the demolition of rent-controlled units. And when BTU said we want no demolition of rent-controlled units allowed, you can build around those units, add additional units, but no to the. What happened was we saw Councilmember Frosty as well as staff for Councilmember Terry Taplin intentionally putting out misinformation, mocking BTU and claiming falsely that state law already prohibits the demolition of rent-controlled units, which is simply not true. So it's been really hostile from the folks hostility from the folks putting this forth. Many, if not all of them, aren't interested in making sure that these are for affordability. They're just trying to make it a giant windfall for the corporate real estate developers. So here's the 5 demands BTU is calling for to make sure that this is an equitable proposal. First, there must be affordable units on site, such as below market rate or Section 8, particularly if the units are to be rented out to non-family members. Number 2, the development must not result in the demolition or alteration of any rent-controlled housing. That's important because of Costa-Hawkins, we can't any newly constructed units can't be rent-controlled. Number 3, the development must not result in the demolition or alteration in any way that results in the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any unit that is old enough to qualify for rent control under Costa-Hawkins. That probably sounds really complicated. Here's what this means. Right now, like basic shorthand is Costa-Hawkins says single-family homes can't be rent controlled, and it just isn't saying new construction can't be rent controlled. But if, for instance, you take a single-family home and you subdivide it into suddenly being a duplex, then you suddenly have units that it's no longer a single-family home, and because it's not new construction, it can still be rent controlled under the Berkeley rent control ordinance. So that's an example of why we're putting out that thing that sounds really complicated. Basically, we are trying to use a loophole to create new rent controlled, additional rent controlled units. But it only works if they aren't allowed to demolish units that were built prior to 1980. Number 4 is anti-additional speculation protections must be included. For instance, the city could require ownership by a real person for 5 years before a development permit can be issued, and require the same person to own the property for 7 years. Same real person to own the property for 7 years after the construction ends before they can sell the property. And number 5 is requiring notice to be provided to all tenants of an application for demolition, elimination, or consolidation of units, because tenants need to know that this is going to happen on the property. So we want to make sure this is about creating affordable housing, not just more market rate housing that fuels gentrification. Because we, in the city of Berkeley, for instance, there's about 1,000 homeless people. The number of vacant rent-controlled units in the city is over 1,000 people, and total number of vacant rent-controlled units in the city is over 3,000. So you could house all the homeless people in Berkeley 3 times over if we took over vacant housing. So we don't have. It's not an affordability. It's not a housing crisis caused by lack of supply. The crisis caused by lack of supply of affordable housing. We need to make sure that we don't lose affordable units, don't further gentrification, and expand the supply of affordable housing. So that's why we're asking our Revolution East Bay to join us in demanding that these council members, and none of whom, by the way, were endorsed by our Revolution East Bay or the Berkeley Tenants Union, put those proposals in. And we really want our Revolution East Bay to join. It's a really important campaign. We're fighting against big moneyed interests, namely the real estate industry that is pushing forth this proposal. One of the council members leading this, there was a dark money group that's funded by for-profit real estate developers. They spent $10,000 getting one of these council members elected against a Bernie Sanders endorsed incumbent that our Revolution East Bay endorsed. So it's really important that we fight. It's a really crucial fight, and we can make a big difference and make sure that we create affordable housing, which is what tenants need. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's it.
Okay, Alfred, you all set?
Yeah, so in short, the 2 issues are, first, the TOPA issue is, it's really about giving tenants and organizations the time to put together a deal, because it takes longer for a group of people than for a private investor to get the financing to purchase a home. And this is based on successful programs that other cities such as Washington, D.C. or San Francisco have already implemented. And then the fourplex issue, it sounds very technical, but it really can be boiled down to, we want to encourage that whatever way it takes, it's about dividing up existing buildings or putting new buildings in the backyard instead of tearing down existing buildings. And that process is going to go over the next couple of years. So there will be many opportunities to get involved when it goes to the Planning Commission and then back to the City Council.
Okay, we have a question here from Igor.
Hi, it's a motion. Are you ready to take motions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there's still people that want to say something.
Okay. I will just
hang
note,
loose. Hang loose.
hang tight. I just wanted to note both the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act and these 5 specific asks of the council have been carefully considered by allied organizations. We didn't just come out of them out of thin cloth. It took a long time to figure out that these were the 5 that truly, while supporting the elimination of single family zoning and modification to up to 4 plexes, coupled with these 5 and coupled with TOPA, that truly is an opportunity for Berkeley that we can all call home. So I urge your support. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add, I also want to clarify one thing.
Excuse me, does somebody else have a comment first? Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, first, thank you, Igor, for talking about how much work went into putting together these 5 amendments to make sure that this helps the situation instead of hurting it. I want to clarify one thing. Alfred said that there's a lot of points at which, this is going to take a couple of years before like an ordinance is passed. But what's in the city, what's before the city council, referring to the fourplexes, not TOPA. But what's before the city council right now is the referral to the planning commission of what to do. And it's extremely important that we have that we make sure that what is in the council referral, the council's directions to the planning commission, include these 5 elements. And it's not just me saying that. Last week, the rent board, a committee of the rent board, made the exact same decision. They were debating, like, should we just wait till it's at the planning commission and then give them instructions there? And they came to the unanimous decision that it was important that no, it is much more of a rush, and they needed to have the full rent board take an official position at their March meeting and get it to the city council. Because if we want to influence what happens from the city, we have to do it while it's still at the city council level. Because, like we've seen, for instance, the chair of the planning commission has also responded really hostile with a lot of hostility towards what BQ has been putting out. Like, he literally referred to our proposed amendments as blasphemous. So we need to make sure the planning commission is told by the city council, this is what you have to include. So that's just why we really hope that I don't think we're going to be that we hope that either a vote today or a vote in the ballots that are sent out to the membership, that we can have you all vote to endorse these positions, both on TOPA and on fourplexes.
So I would like to hear from somebody from the OR board, what they think about this. If anybody, I don't know, either Contra Costa or the OR East Bay would like to make a comment or ask a question. I would like to, before we have any kind of vote or anything. First of all, we can't really vote on Zoom, but so I just want to mention that. Anyway, does anybody have a comment? Gordon, Jake, Gordon, you have your hand up.
I have a comment.
Oh, Michael.
Carol, I know what TOPA stands for, but there's plenty of detail. I went on the website just earlier. There's 60 or 70 pages of details. And I have very little understanding of the details. I wonder if it's possible to have a summary of some sort in a written form sent to the member. If you're expecting a vote, we want to understand more of these things.
Sure. This is Paola. This is, if you allow me to speak. Sure, it is a very complicated, it's a process. It's the rules of how, it's how you buy a house, and it's a legislation. It's how you buy a house if you're a tenant. What are the rules? And it's taking into consideration the timelines when you put a purchase in, you know, when you get your bank loans, everything. If you ever bought a house, it goes step by step and how it's supposed to work. So, you know, there are FAQs on the website, yes2topa.org. It explains it. It is coming before the Land Use Committee on the 18th. So if you wanted to learn more, it has not, that's when the legislation is going to be unveiled. But it goes step by step on what's the timeline, if it's transferred to a qualified organization, all those issues, who is exempt from having to apply for TOPA. You know, if you live in a, you know, golden duplex, you know, you are exempt, all sorts of things. So the exemptions, who can buy, etc. So, so I hope that answers your question. But, you know, go through the FAQs, please.
No,
And
it does not answer. It does not answer my question, because I looked at the FAQs too, and there are still a lot of minute details. I think that, you know, if you want people to vote on something, you ought to be able to give a elevator speech of some sort, and not just the end result, but also some details. I mean, the FAQs tells you question and it tells you the end result. It's not very satisfactory to me.
I just posted a link in the chat to what is BTU's current Facebook cover photo. It's a four-step explainer of how TOPA works, and I think that's a really helpful. I think we could send that, because it explains in just a few sentences. And I could read it out loud right now if folks want. I can't share my screen, I think.
You know,
Otherwise I would.
We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So there's several other people that want to comment. So let's see, Alfred and then Igor.
Okay, so here's the short explainer of how the process works for TOPA. Right now, without TOPA, if somebody wants to sell a house, they can sell it and somebody can buy it the next day. Under TOPA, if someone wants to sell a house or a building that has a tenant in it, first they go to the tenant and say, are you interested? And if they say yes, then they get a certain amount of time to talk to the other tenants, possibly talk to a nonprofit, and come back with an offer. And only after that has happened could the house or property be sold to somebody else. So that's the quick summary.
Perfect, perfect, Alfred.
Okay, Igor was the next person we called on.
Yeah, to Michael's question, and this was a really awesome summary. It didn't even take 30 seconds. One thing that the Sierra Club has done with complicated items is to do a support in concept position. And that's exactly what the Sierra Club did with the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. And that's likely going to be what we will at least attempt to do next month for the 5 elements of the proposal around quadruplexes. So if it may please the members of the OREB steering committee to add this to the ballot, my recommendation would be to do a support in concept position.
What about this thing about the fourplex that Matthew mentioned briefly?
I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak on behalf of. I'm not speaking on behalf of Pala. Pala may differ in what I'm going to say. One thing I do worry about with both TOPA and fourplex is one thing we're worried about is stuff getting watered down. Like I think Pala, like with TOPA, one thing we're worried about is like attempts to water down like who TOPA applies to. So supporting. So I don't know if supporting concept. I at least have some hesitancy about that. Maybe Pala feels differently, at least on TOPA. She's really the expert on TOPA here. But it's definitely better than nothing.
Yes, all it does really just allows the tenant to have the first right of offer and refusal. Nothing, it changes nothing at all whatsoever. Eventually, if you know, and the house is sold at market rate, it doesn't dilute the price of the house, nothing. It just gives the tenant that opportunity. And at this time where it's so hard to buy housing in Berkeley, this is a great opportunity to allow people who live in Berkeley to stay in Berkeley. It's so important. For example, it covers single family homes. And you know, the nearly 2,000 single family homes and condos in Berkeley. And these are, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 people, maybe more if you count how many people live in those households. You know, it will prevent displacement if people have an opportunity. Maybe they can't buy it, but at least it gives them that chance to be able to get into, you know, own their homes. And if it's sold to a qualified organization such as a land trust, because they get money from you know, they're subsidized, that you can create affordable housing because it's now subsidized, so it qualifies as affordable housing, which is something we need desperately in Berkeley, desperately, because there's no affordable housing, and this is a way to get it.
Okay, I have a question. Has the Berkeley Rent Board supported this, endorsed it?
Yes, the Berkeley Rent Board endorsed it last year in May, I believe. We endorsed it.
And the rent board, and for fourplexes, the rent board is the full rent board is voting at their meeting this month on basically the concerns on supporting the concerns B2's been raising on.
Just let me correct Matthew. I'm not sure that's on the agenda, so I can't say that because I'm not. The agenda isn't out yet for the next meeting.
Right.
We can assume something's going to come up.
The committee. One of the committees voted to put that on the agenda for the March rent board meeting.
Oh, thank you.
The one that I was at, that I watched, because I know you weren't able to attend that one because you're not on the committee.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Did you want to say anything now, Igor? You talked about a motion earlier.
I move, well, I move to respectfully request of the Revolution East Bay Steering Committee that they add a vote of the membership to the next OREB ballot that would include both Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act support in concept or otherwise, and the 5 elements of a Berkeley we can all call home that were discussed at length by Matthew, Paola, and Alfred. So that's my motion. And I will mention that on, at least as far as TOPA is concerned, this is probably the one issue where the Alameda County Democratic Party is actually ahead. It's already unanimously approved support for TOPA at our last meeting, as did the Alameda County Labor Council and the Sierra Club. And we would love our Revolution East Bay to join this growing coalition of progressive organizations that support it.
Hear, hear.
So I have a question for the OREB and Contra Costa board. Is anybody opposed to us putting this on the ballot, and why?
I have a point. If the motion were to be executed, I would like to see the wording of the motion spelled out, not just use the word TOPA, because TOPA can be implied to mean a lot of things. I mean, there could be 60 or 70 pages of things. The concept, I would like you to write it down. What is the concept? In concept, when it says Igor use the word concept, in concept, to write out the word in concept, and then I can second that motion.
This is a great opportunity for affordable housing to be bought. This is a way that people can actually buy that. And to put this, block this out, this is a super progressive housing policy. So to say that the concept isn't clear, I just find that kind of weird.
No, I'm not saying the concept is not clear. I would like to use those words you just said as in a statement where the member can vote on those words, not just vote on.
You want somebody to write that in the.
I think I might have a solution. Would it be, how about like supporting TOPA as put forth by the Yes to TOPA Coalition?
I don't know what that is.
So that's the group that is working on TOPA. It has like representatives from Berkeley Tenants Union, the Land Trust. They're the ones who have like the Yes to TOPA website. And it's like the version of the ordinance that I think you've seen as well. So that maybe that way, like we know which specific version of TOPA we want, the full-on version, and not some like, we're not endorsing some like watered down version that like says this only applies to buildings with 100 properties or something.
Okay, I would like to say, I think it's going to have to be a separate ballot, not part of the one that we're sending out for the candidates, because I think it's going to cause too much confusion. So along with the ballot, I think information would need to be sent out to people. And we have another person that's going to speak about something that's asked us to endorse something too. So maybe that could all go out later in the week as a thing. Anyway, so let's see.
Well, just please let us know what we need to send you. We'll be happy to send you. And thank you everybody for the opportunity.
So what do people think about that, of having it as a separate ballot in a few days?
Yeah, I agree that we should table that discussion for now.
Yeah, if we're sending it out in a few days, I think that works for us.
Okay, what would we need to have exactly, Michael, since you're the one that sends out the ballot?
I think there's nothing magic. I don't know, maybe you guys think the word TOPA has a magical power. I don't think it has any magical power to the average person. Those concepts in words are much more magical to a common person, unattached person. than the letter TOPA. So I would really appreciate if you can write out what the concepts are. Then we can bet on a
Oh,
ballot.
do you
Much
mean
more
that
meaningful.
Tenant Opportunity Protection Act, is that what you're talking about?
Tenant
it's
Opportunity to Purchase Act.
Purchase Act?
Oh, Purchase Act, sorry.
I think I understand Michael's point, and speaking just for myself, although I am a member of the Yes to TOPA Coalition, I think a one-page fact sheet, which already has been posted in the chat, is doable. And I like Matthew's amendment to my motion. If Matthew will second it, I'm friendly to that amendment.
My amendment being like it's the yes,
A Yes to
TOPA.
TOPA coalition proposal specifically.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess with the fourplex, it can be, you know, the BTU position.
Yeah, Berkeley Tenants Union. Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'll second that so that it's those, and I'll work with Paula and the steering committee to make sure that they have that language and any language and any like appendices, like links they need to make it clear to the membership during the vote what they're voting on.
Okay, does that work for you, Michael?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, by when do we want to have this stuff given so you can get a ballot out?
I can get the ballot out in an hour or so. It's not so hard.
No, but I know you can't do it tonight, and we got to get the other
Right,
one out first.
right. So
By Tuesday, is that?
sure. Yes.
Okay, does that work for you guys, Matthew, Paola?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, ready to move on. You twisted our arms.
There's actually one quick question in the chat. Carla West, I have a question regarding the statewide candidates. If one isn't currently a member of the Democratic Party, can one join and be eligible to vote? I think if you're talking about the candidates we had talking today, that's for the chair. And
yeah, those are only the elected delegates can.
Yeah,
like
only the
Alfred.
delegates.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, we're endorsing them as our revolution. And there are people in our Revolution East Bay who are delegates and will be able to vote for them, but most of us will not be able to actually be in the real vote.
Right.
So what you're voting on is
But they'll be able to say they got endorsed by our Revolution East Bay if they get endorsed by us.
Right. If you had like 3 months ago, I would have said yes, then you could have voted in ADEMs. But now, I mean, you should still probably register to be a member of the Democratic Party. That way you can vote in all the other little elections that they have. So it might be a good idea. But yeah, okay, Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so are we finished with that and ready to move on to our final part of the night? Okay, we have kind of a new, well, you know, he's not a new member. He's been a member a couple years. And he's mostly worked with Contra Costa people, but he comes to our meetings and he's been an actual member. We have Gordon Miller.
Yay!
You still here, Gordon?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I thought you gave up.
I was muted. We just went through some unpleasant experience with Props 15 and 22. These were pretty much obvious things that should be passed, no-brainers, and a lot of deceptive advertising was rolled out, and they both went down to defeat. So we need some kind of additional truth in advertising measures regarding ballot propositions. And that's what this pair of bills is doing. They have the same language. One has been introduced in the Senate and one has been introduced in the Assembly. It's the Ballot Disclose Act. And I'm going to post right now 2 fact sheets about it. One is a single pager, one is a 2-pager, and I just put it up in the chat section. What this will do, and if you look at the fact sheet, you'll see it at the bottom of the first page. It shows a sample ballot and how it would be modified. You have the Secretary of State distillate, and it has the proposition number, the name, a yes and no slot, and it shows, in addition, who supports it and who opposes it. So in the case of this, requires that certain state and local fees be approved by 2/3 vote. I think for those of us who are progressive, that would send off alarm bells instantly, but it didn't. Who are the supporters for this one? The California Taxpayers Association, the California Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Action Committee, and it's interesting, they got the Nisei Farmers League. Opponents, League of Women Voters, California Lung Association, Sierra Club, and California League of Conservation Voters. It kind of tells you that the angels are on one side, and with a minor exception of the Nisei, the devils are on the other side. So that's where what this is. It's a final chance for the people that don't have the chance to read and peruse the 100 pages of stuff that the Secretary of State sends out before the election to see who's supporting and who's opposing. A big question is, does this list the supporters, the largest donors? It doesn't list them. It lists the people who write the arguments in the 100-page pamphlet that you get from the Secretary of State. So you have an understanding of what kind of people are for and against. So I'd appreciate it. I'd like to see an endorsement. It's starting to wend its way through the legislature now, and it's going up before a committee chaired by Steve Glazer. I don't know how many of you in Alameda County are familiar with this guy. I'd say he's a genuine piece of work. But in any event, we need to put a lot of heat on to get this through. And this morning, by the way, the California Clean Money Campaign advocates this. They've put through several disclosure propositions over the past several years, or bills, and they've got them put through. And the California Progressive Alliance is very impressed with their ground game, very, very impressed, and it is good. So that's what I'm asking for, an endorsement of this bill. And beyond that, if it needs to be passed out to the membership, that's fine. If it can be done by this meeting or sending out a ballot on Tuesday, that's fine too.
Okay, so I have a question. Would it work for us, and I think Michael will have to answer this, would it work for us to have info sheet on this and have both this and the topo on the same ballot?
Yeah, that would make it easier because it's all legislature focused versus.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna have it on the ballot, and the links that you sent me earlier, that's what we should send out, right, Gordon?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have 2 ballots go out this week. This is gonna be a wild week. I think that's everything. Anybody have anything else? Because we're just, we're running out of time. We're already a half hour over.
Sherry was asking about topo.
Sherry, what do you need to say?
Topo?
No, I just was echoing exactly what you said before,
Oh, okay,
Carol.
okay.
That putting him together would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to say one quick thing, which is, so I know I usually give an update as the social media manager. One is we have good news on Thursday, Facebook removed the ban on political and social ads, so we should be able to start advertising the club to like do growth more. So that's really exciting. And the other thing is, I say this usually, I just want to thank Jake, who helps a lot with social media. He sometimes makes some of our best posts and some of the best parts of the website. So just want to thank him, and also the other board members who also make posts, for all your help, because you help make this really great.
Thank you.
Okay, I think our final comment is from Igor.
It's an announcement whenever you're ready to
Go
move
for
there.
it. Go for it.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna do this in 30 seconds. I have a 6:30 to hop to. Thank you, everyone who joined the Sierra Club, for your support. Ballots are out. If you have not received the ballot, I will drop in the chat the website and my email, and we will work with you to make sure you are enfranchised and can vote before the April 28th deadline. Also, I'm really excited to announce, and you're one of the first organizations I'm announcing it to, that I will be running for chair of the California Democratic Party Environmental Caucus. And so I'll be sending more information about how to join, and would love to see you on Zoom. And it is open to all registered Democrats. You don't have to be a delegate to join. So thank you so much.
Okay. Everything that's on the agenda has been dealt with. Does anybody want to say anything before we cut the cords?
Yes, this is Paola. I'd like to invite everybody to check out the BTU Facebook page. We're announcing that on Wednesday, there's going to be a showing of the movie Push that looks at the faceless landlords or nameless landlords that are taking over the housing industry throughout the world. How corporations are using their money and parking it in apartments and keeping them empty. So
yeah, I see you got a link here.
Yes, it's really important. It's really
check out the chat.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, it's really, if you want to see what's happening with the housing market, why we're so worried and interested and need affordable housing, this is a great movie to see, to give you an idea of what's happening. It's just the corporatization of housing and it's for market rate housing. So we need affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, one for the town hall coming up is the education town hall for education justice. I don't think we're not having an April meeting because the town hall is on the 10th. So everyone, make sure you check out your emails for those. And we got some great speakers coming up for that. And they're going to be presenting specifically on the history of public education and the history of the privatization movement of public education. So it'll be quite a bit of fun.
Okay.
Okay. Next time we have an official meeting will be early.
Wait, studio stop. Studio stop.
It'll be early May,